Hello and welcome to the 2021 State of Medical Device Virtual Summit hosted by Greenlight Guru. We really got a great session for you here today. Hope you've enjoyed some of the sessions we've had over the last day and a half or so. Right now we're going to be talking about the numbers, a complete reforecast of the global medical device market from 2020 to 2025. My name is Nick Tittman. I'm the VP of Marketing here at Greenlight Guru, and I will be your moderator for today's event. Before we dive too deep in today's presentation and introduce our speaker, Scott Pantel, and his company, Life Science Intelligence, I'm going to touch on a few housekeeping items real quick. First, the session is about 45 minutes long and will include a Q&A session at the end. So please submit your questions throughout the presentation in the box on the right-hand side, and we will get to as many of them as time permits. The entire session is being recorded, and yes, the slides will be available for you to download after the event. I'd also like to share just a few quick words about Greenlight Guru and why we put on this free virtual summit. Here at Greenlight Guru, our mission is to improve the quality of life. Anything we can do as an organization that helps bring you safer, life-changing devices to market quicker and with less risk aligns with that mission, whether that's through hosting these free training sessions or through our award-winning medical device QMS software. If you'd like to learn more about why medical device companies around the globe are moving away from paper-based and general-purpose quality management systems and adopting our purpose-built medical device quality management software, head on over to www.greenlight.guru after today's presentation, and you can schedule your free personalized one-on-one demo. So now, on to the bulk of today's presentation. I'd like to introduce and hand it over to Scott Pantel, CEO and founder of Life Science Intelligence. Scott, take us away.
All right, thank you, Nick, and welcome to everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to tap into the session. I want to, before I do a quick introduction of myself and the company, I just want to thank Greenlight Guru, thank Nick and Kennedy and the whole team, the executive team at Greenlight Guru for putting on this tremendous event. I've always admired Greenlight Guru's leadership, their tech savvy, and what they're doing to improve industry. So I want to thank the whole team for letting Life Science Intelligence be a part of this great event. And again, I want to thank everyone for participating today. What I hope to go over the course of the next 30 minutes, I'll try and come in under if I can. I'm sure you've seen plenty of slides over the course of the last several months and Zoom meetings. But what I'm going to attempt to do is to go over the numbers. Life Science Intelligence is a med tech focused market intelligence firm. I'm the CEO of the company. We've been around for nearly 20 years, and our mission is to help our customers make better strategic decisions. And the way that we do that is by providing them with independent, unbiased assessments of markets. So we work with our customers who range anywhere from venture-funded startups all the way up to the biggest medical device companies in the world, companies like Johnson & Johnson, Medtronic, and many of the companies that I'm sure folks that are on this session work for. Those are our customers, and again, we're here to help them make good decisions by providing them with data. We also work very closely with the investment community who looks at opportunities in investing in small early stage companies and may be also involved in M&A activity. So with that, I'm gonna jump right into it. I've shared with you briefly who we are. One important mention is that one of our strategic partners who helped really build the foundation, the backbone for the data that I'll be presenting today, is a tremendous company called Health Research International. They've been around for over 40 years. In my opinion, they're one of the best, if not the best, boutique market intelligence firms, and we're very happy to be a strategic partner of theirs. Okay, so the impact of COVID. As we all know, this pandemic has absolutely wreaked havoc with not only the global medical device and diagnostic market, but the world today. And so in April, May, when we all came to the conclusion that this thing is not going away, this thing is the real deal, we immediately, as a market research firm, woke up and recognized that all of the forecasts and all of the data that we had been building over the course of the last 15 plus years really in many cases became obsolete. So we were in a very challenging position that we needed to re-examine the entire market segment by segment. We needed to do it meticulously so that, again, we could report data back out to our customers who are making really, really big strategic decisions based on what's happening. So our commitment for the last 6 months has been really to just re-examine every single market. So many of you work for small and large companies who have market research teams that are out doing the same thing. And we're here really to assist your market intelligence and your business development teams. So just a little bit of commentary before we get into the numbers. We initially thought that the impact of COVID would be limited to really the first half of the year, with hospital and physician visits, surgical procedures subsequently rebounding to normal levels, and then some as the medical community's understanding of and their ability really to treat COVID-19 deepened. But this has not been the case. Despite clear improvements in understanding, containing, and protecting the global population from the virus, it really continues to negatively impact most medical device suppliers. There are a few exceptions in there, and we're going to talk about that in subsequent slides. The clear exceptions, of course, have been companies that are in the ventilator space, COVID-19 testing, various respiratory products markets, select monitoring systems markets, and really in the infection control products areas. Other markets have really been impacted really hard. But the good news is, and again, we'll get to this later, is that we do see a rebound and we're optimistic. So with that, I'm going to move to slide 4, where we have, this is sort of a high-level view of the total global medical devices and diagnostics market. So we cover every segment in MD&D, and if we look at 2019, pre-COVID, this was a $450 billion market, growing at about a 5% compound growth rate, and it was a healthy market. And in fact, prior to this call, I spoke with some of my analysts, and we now will point out that 2020 will be the first year in the years that we've been covering the medical devices market where we have taken a drop. In 2018, during the massive financial crisis, we were near a drop, but we were really, basically we ended flat. So this is a historic year for not only the world, but also for the global medical devices and diagnostic market. So again, we're down 40 billion from 2019 to 2020. We're going to go through each segment. But what we see, and this is the optimistic part of things, is we do see a huge boost coming in 2021 with nearly $50 billion in growth as soon as 2021. A lot of it will be made up in the second half of 2021. And then we are forecasting back to steady growth through 2024. And as you'll see in 2024, we're forecasting that we'll be back to a $570 billion market. So we're going to go over quite a few segments. This is for the period of time that we have here. It is going to be top level information. As Nick has mentioned, we will share all these slides after the call, but there's also a lot of supporting data behind these numbers that if anybody's interested, we're happy to provide the supporting data that really builds these models as well. So as I move on to slide 5, just a real top level view of drivers and limiters for what's happening. We do see growth coming from strong gains in emerging segments like robotic surgery, and there's various others. The strong demand for infection control products, respiratory products, and diagnostic tests related to COVID-19. And the big limiters are really the obvious, but as we go through the slides, you'll see that the procedure volume pause. A lot of procedures have been put on delay. Some have been lost completely. We'll talk about that. So companies whose products are directly tied to really elective procedures, non-essential procedures, have really had a hard time this year, and they'll continue to have a hard time rebounding again in the second half of next year. And then, of course, there have been massive constraints on the purchase of expensive systems for specialized applications, especially in tertiary centers where caseloads have really declined. And again, full details on the drivers and limiters that come to support the models that we're about ready to show you are also available after this presentation. So I'm going to jump right into each one of the technology segments. We cover hundreds of segments of the medical device market. We roll them up into 25 key segments. I'm going to quickly go through those 25 segments, and we are starting with from largest market down to smallest market. So what you see in front of you here are the three largest segments of medical devices and diagnostics. In vitro diagnostic is the biggest sector overall, has been for many years. It's over a $60 billion market. It took a hit in the traditional IVD testing segment, which led to a small total decrease for this market because we had advanced molecular diagnostic segment really giving this segment a huge boost. So over the course of the next 5 years, we see IVD growing at over 13%, again, largely driven by advanced molecular diagnostics. This is a huge segment. It's growing. It took a hit in a couple sub-segments, but it will continue to be a big winner over the course of the next 5 years. Another large segment that you'll see on this slide here in the middle, and again, just to give a frame up these slides that you'll see, blue represents the current, represents last year rather, red represents the impact of COVID for 2020, and then 2021 is our first forecast year beyond 2020. Excuse me, aqua is our 2021 forecast. Imaging, another huge market. It's over a $50 billion market. It's going to remain relatively flat. It'll hold its ground this year, not as heavily impacted as other segments, and we see steady growth in the imaging market over the next 5 years. We'll start to make up ground beginning in 2021. Third segment on this slide, cardiovascular therapies, another huge market. And this segment did take a very substantial hit in 2020, lost about $5 billion in market value based on the data that we're looking at, which translates to nearly a 10% loss year over year from 2019 to 2020. So this was a big hit to the industry and a very, very big and important segment. This category includes items like rhythm management, transcatheter therapies, cardiac surgery, and it especially hit companies like Medtronic, Abbott, J&J, Boston Scientific. They took a big hit in 2020. As I move to slide 7, again, we're in some big markets, and this slide highlights probably the area that was hit the most this year, and that's our orthopedic and spine segment. Because this segment is so closely tied to elective procedures, and we're going to talk about this in a bit more detail as we get into the presentation, but because it is so tied to elective procedures, they really took it on the chin this year. And so companies like Zimmer, Stryker, J&J, Smith & Nephew, they really have had a difficult time in this segment. We're starting to see some of these elective procedures coming back already here in the fourth quarter, but they won't make up for what was lost. They will continue at a nice pace, even with the current, subsequent round of lockdowns that we're all going through. They will continue to come back, and we see strong growth in the second half of 2021. But really, this segment of orthopedics and spine is going to be one of the segments that's going to take a few years to really come back. The good news is that it's chock full of innovative companies, major strategics. We expect to see some M&A in this segment as well. Dental, another segment, they took a big hit, over 20%, lost $6 billion in revenues in 2020. Leaders in this segment are Dentsply, Danaher. They lost a lot of market value. They will come back again in early 2021, and we see them back on steady growth quickly. The endoscopy market, same story. They're down big, about 18%, but we do see a fairly expedited return to normal in the second half of 2021. And you are going to hear this theme throughout, but we want to quantify some of these segments for you just so you can see how big the impact was. And we also want to highlight some of the segments that really came out of this as winners. So as I move on to slide 8, You'll see here 3 categories. Again, these are big segments, all nearly $20 billion markets. Total aggregate, these 3 segments represent 60 billion of the 450 billion MD&D market. So these are substantial segments. We have detailed models supporting all this data. Urology and renal, they're going to be up in 2021. They're actually one of the segments that did not decline. The segments that we cover in our models for this category include dialysis, ostomy, urine collection, and incontinence management. And some of the major competitors are, big winners this year like Baxter, Fresenius, and Nipro, also to name a few. And it is nice to see a segment actually grow this year. They're one of the rare segments that grew, urology and renal. Moving on, we have drug delivery, which you'll see was relatively flat. But we will see nice growth. We forecast nice growth once we get this situation in the rearview mirror. Segments in drug delivery, as we model them out, include infection, infusion pumps, and sets, gravity administration, vascular access, enteral therapy products, insulin pumps, and sets. And the market leaders in this space are BD, Braun, Medtronic, Baxter, and we also anticipate some heavy M&A activity over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. There are a lot of innovative companies that are emerging in this space, and we see some big upside for earlier stage companies, and we see some acquisitions coming with strong balance sheets with a lot of the major players and cash to spend. Third segment in this slide is our energy-based therapy. They took a substantial hit, same story. We expect them to come back. This is a high growth segment. Technology used in energy-based therapies include, applications for oncology, surgical ablation, aesthetics, ophthalmic and cardiovascular markets. Some of the leaders in this space include Johnson & Johnson, Varian, Medtronic, and Elekta, among others. Strong companies, and we expect this segment to come back. It is a high growth segment that just it's going to take a big hit in the short term. So I move on to slide 9. We see a big winner in the middle of this slide in critical care products. Naturally, they did very well. Clear-cut winners really in 2020. Ventilation and patient monitoring segments saw huge growth for obvious reasons. And a lot of competitors in this space. We have some new competitors that have come into the ventilators market, but legacy companies, big players like Philips, GE, Medtronic, and Draeger are really seeing some nice growth, and it will continue. The first segment on this slide, wound closure, they took a big hit. Again, this is a segment that is just closely tied to surgical procedures, many of which are elective, non-essential procedures that have been postponed or lost. We have lost some procedures, but those that have just been postponed will come back, and we will see the wound closure and wound management segment come back nicely over the course of the next 5 years. A lot of innovation in this space. One of the things that we do here at LSI is we track privately held companies that are emerging, that are innovating, and work with our big strategic and investor clients to identify opportunities. And we see a lot of really interesting companies in this space, and think that it'll be back to healthy growth once again when we get this situation in the rearview mirror, which I know doesn't feel like it could come soon enough, but we do see a lot of optimism and hope coming over the next 6 to 9 months. Surgical instruments, I'll move on. This is a relatively flat market, rather static market, not a lot of innovation, modest growth, and this market will continue to have about 2% growth over the course of the next 5 years. But it's a decent sized market, so it's notable. As I move to slide 10, here we look at another big market, huge winner, and that is the sterilization and infection control market. Got a huge boost in 2020 with the demand for PPE and infection control products. This clearly is not a short-term situation that we're dealing with. This is a new world that we're living in. It's here to stay. And the companies that have a foothold in the sterilization and infection control markets are going to absolutely benefit, not only in the short term as we're seeing it now, but in the long term. We see innovation in this space as well, tracking a lot of early stage companies that are doing some amazing things, and we expect to see their technologies funded more rapidly and come to market sooner, and ultimately acquisitions happening with some of the big legacy companies like 3M, Owens & Minor, J&J/Fortive, Steris, Pantel Medical, Medline, Mölnlycke, Cardinal Health, Hartman. These are all big players, huge winners, and we expect this market to continue to grow rapidly, not only year over year, but through 2024. The hearing instruments market was a rough year for this segment. They'll come back. It will come back, but it will be on delay, and it's a substantial market. They lost over $3 billion in revenues in 2020, make up a lot of it in 2021, and they'll be back. They'll be back strong. It'll take a couple of years, but we do see a lot of innovation in this space as well. And then finally on this page, in the ophthalmic surgery area, again, this is another pre-COVID, a very high growth segment, growing rapidly, tons of innovation. Took a massive hit. They're going to take a massive hit of about just under $3 billion, but they will come back. We've got big, strong, innovative strategics in there with a strong foundation. So companies like Alcon, J&J, Carl Zeiss, Bausch, they will come back, but they're gonna take it on the chin. They're taking it on the chin this year, and the first half of next year may be slow to growth, but then in the second half of next year we see a nice comeback. So I'm going to go to slide 11 now. Some relatively flat markets you'll see for the first two segments. The big story on this slide is the aesthetics market. This is a segment that had a really hard time. They're clearly driven by elective procedures, which have been postponed. There's also a big economic element in this segment where whenever we see a tightening of the consumer economy, the procedures are often not just delayed, but many of them are lost. So they are going to take a big hit. Companies like Allergan, AbbVie, Galderma, Merz, they're going to be stung. They're stinging in 2020. But again, positive story over the course of the long term, when we get things moving forward and get back to normal, if there is a such thing, there will be, and we do see it coming, there will be strong, about 5% growth through 2024, even for a segment like aesthetics that clearly had a hard time this year. So as we're moving on and we're getting near the end of the segments here, I know we're covering a lot of numbers, but I want to be thorough with this. Our blood and donation management segment sees a drop, a slight bounce in 2021. Home respiratory is another big winner. They have leaders like ResMed, Philips Respironics, Fisher & Paykel, Cardinal Health. Segments in this categories that really won are sleep therapy and diagnostics, oxygen therapy, and home ventilation. Another big winner in this slide that you'll see here is the robotic systems market. And really, they're a winner despite COVID. They're not a winner because of COVID, although some of the benefits of robotic surgery and digital surgery really were magnified as we come into this pandemic and learn to deliver healthcare in new ways and really focus on minimally invasive techniques. We saw big acquisitions. We've seen big acquisitions in the robotics system space. It's a big winner. It's a high growth sector. Pre-COVID, it's going to be a big high growth sector despite COVID and especially post-COVID. So if you're going to make some bets, I would bet in this space and look out for the big strategics who are really positioning themselves for the future of robotic surgery systems. I'm going to do a time check here and move to slide 13, where we see some of the smaller markets. We're getting towards the end of those initial 25 segments. We see non-wovens have decent growth. They weren't impacted too hard. Neurostimulation, very high growth market pre-COVID, takes a big hit this year. We'll get back to nice growth, and we see a lot of strategic activity in this space as well, and expect M&A, strong M&A over the course of the next 5 years, tracking some really hot privately held companies in this space that are doing some incredible things. I would make a note of this segment. If you're in it, congratulations. And if it's a space that you're looking at in your white space, it's something that I would definitely take note of. Surgical tables, lights, and fixed takes a small drop and then increases. And then the hernia mesh category, one of the smaller categories, but still a $2 billion market, also takes a hit in 2020 and will start to come back. So I'll pause there for a second and just make a note that, again, the overall story or the theme that we see, and you've seen in a lot of these slides, is that first year of decline in the history of us tracking medical device markets, and maybe in the history for many centuries, but it will come back. So while we present a lot of difficult data here and losses in revenues, we are optimistic that things will come back. We see our sector coming together, doing things like we're doing today here. We're collaborating, working together with our partners, informing ourselves so that we can make better strategic decisions. We love this space because of the innovation that we see in it. It really is the small emerging companies and the entrepreneurs that are driving innovation in the space, and the big strategics that have the balance sheets, the cash, and the access to customers to really take those technologies, impact patients, and improve lives. And so we are overall, I just want to emphasize that we are optimistic about the future of our industry. So I'm going to kind of expedite through this because I know I'm taking some time. Big winners, we've already went over this. IVD, driven by advanced molecular diagnostics. Sterilization, robotic surgery systems, despite COVID, not because of COVID. So I move to slide 15, more detail on IVD. And again, all this data is going to be available after the presentation. So I will just let you take a look at this slide, and you'll see 7.2% growth over the course of our forecast period. As I move to slide 16, again, the massive winner, sterilization and infection control, big growth year over year, sustained growth, ongoing growth, and really will play a big factor in the healthcare system moving forward. And while a note about this market, while many of the PPE technologies are relatively low tech segments, things like masks, gloves, drapes, gowns, we see a tremendous amount of innovation, especially in the infection control and sterilization areas. And so I would expect to see some M&A and to see some really exciting technologies come out of what was previously, I would call a relatively boring but very important market. We think it will shift to an even more important market marketed by innovation. And so we see some really interesting companies that are innovating in this space. And we see a lot of investment dollars being poured into those companies. So we move to slide 17. Again, we've spent a lot of time on this. I'll just point out, I'll note that in 2019, we've seen major acquisitions. In 2019, J&J's $5.3 billion acquisition of Auris Health. That is the first of many coming. There's already been a couple more acquisitions this year. We see others coming. We see a lot of investment dollars, venture capital, private equity money, and there'll be a lot of strategic and corporate investments that continue in this space. a company that's really covering this market strongly is Alira Health. They're also one of our strategic partners, doing some incredible things. So if this is a space that you're in or have interest in, I would reach out to Alira Health and tap into some of the insights and really the access that they have in this space, because it's quite impressive, and we do see big opportunities in the robotic surgery system space. As I move to slide 18, again, we've talked about the negatively impacted markets. Won't spend a lot of time on this. Don't want to be doom and gloom, but orthopedics and spine, aesthetics, ophthalmic surgery all took a hit. They're going to come back. Orthopedics, we feel for, but these are great companies that are innovating, and they will come back. Aesthetics, we see the numbers here. And as I move to, I'm going to pause here on the ophthalmic surgery slide. Key segments include cataract, and I'm on slide 21 now. And we're going sort of fast here. Nick is he's my quarterback, so thank you, Nick. You're doing a tremendous job. And I fumbled a couple times, but you're making up for my shortcomings, so I thank you, Nick Tippman. Here on slide 21 for ophthalmic surgery, key segments: cataract, intraocular lenses, and refractive surgery. Procedure volumes are way down in 2021, or excuse me, in 2020, but we're already starting to see them come back. Same story of how businesses that are tied to elective procedures, they really got put in a corner. But again, these are strong companies, innovative companies, and a lot of early stage companies innovating in these spaces, which are going to help us to grow these markets and get back. Companies with strong balance sheets in this space, big players include companies like Alcon, J&J, Carl Zeiss, and they will be back, and they will be back strong. So now I'm going to shift gears a bit and go to slide 22, excuse me. And this is a slide that we put together very early in the early months, in the March, April months, where we wanted to put together, we had customers asking us, you know, who was going to get hit and what was our assessment of the competitive landscape. And so what you see on this slide are really three general buckets. The companies in the low category, you'll see the companies listed, and then their total 2019 revenues at the top of the red bar for Becton Dickinson, for example, $13.4 billion in 2019 MD&D revenues. So the companies that you'll see in the low category are companies, this is a risk category, risk bucketing of categories. So they were relatively hit low and or even had positive years. So companies like BD, Fresenius, and Cardinal Health, their exposure, as we've outlined here on this slide, was relatively low. Other low exposure companies who were not impacted as bad and or even were experiencing growth were companies like Baxter and Fresenius, which we didn't include on this slide. But those are 5 companies that really had low exposure. As we move, shift to the aqua chart, we have companies that had moderate exposure going into this situation. These are companies like Abbott, Philips, and Roche that you see here. Others not listed include Siemens, GE, Danaher, Braun, Terumo. The list goes on, but those are the major players. And then finally, we get to the high exposure companies. And these are some of the very biggest companies. In fact, Medtronic got hit very hard, high exposure, made up for it in other segments, but some of their key segments were really hard. You see Stryker and Boston Scientific listed here, and other high exposure companies that would fall into this green category are companies like J&J, Zimmer, Olympus, Smith & Nephew. And again, you'll see a lot of orthopedic and elective surgery procedure heavy companies. So we've had a lot of requests to get detail on these slides, on this slide in particular, this exposure slide. So if you'd like some backup data or more information, let us know, and we'll be happy to give you some supporting information, and even we'll give you an assessment of where we see your company at with regard to that. And as I'm getting close to the end here, a final slide, sort of a wrap-up slide. We've talked a lot about the impact of non-essential procedures and how that's affected companies. We've been tracking as a company surgical procedure volumes for the last 15 plus years. It's one of the backbones of all the market research that we do is patient populations, corresponding procedure volumes. And we track not only the big established industrialized markets, but we also track emerging markets. So what you see on this slide is a visual of the United States and EU5, which are the key indicators for procedure volumes. In the dark blue, we have US procedure volumes. In the lighter blue, we have the aggregate of EU5 procedure volumes. So in 2019, for example, you'll see that there were just under 140 million procedures performed that we tracked. We lose nearly 20 million procedures this year, and this is where all the revenues are lost. You can directly tie those procedure losses to revenues. But again, the really good news is that we're already seeing a bounce back, and we're forecasting a 28% bounce in 2021, heavily loaded on the back end. There are a lot of moving parts. These numbers could change, but we have been tracking procedures. We have a product called COVID Tracker, where we're giving our customers real-time access to the numbers that we're seeing and the shifts. And we have breakouts for all of this data, including emerging countries that are also seeing, they're trailing us, but these are good leading indicators. And so procedure volumes, huge indicator, tracking it closely. And again, the positive news here is that they will bounce back. So, okay, deep breath. I wanted to cover a lot of information in a short period of time, and I hope this has been useful. I want to open it up to questions. And again, anything that I can't answer on this call, or that's just something that we can't get to, I welcome any questions, and I will get answers for you. Just a recap, sort of a takeaway. We're taking a massive hit in 2020. However, the rebound is poised. Hospitals and healthcare providers are implementing new strategies. We've got telehealth, incredible. We're doing things like we're doing here today, where we're all on a Zoom call, collaborating in a way that we probably wouldn't have pre-COVID. So some really good things have come out of this really, really, really serious and terrible situation. But we are the US, we are the innovators of the world. And as an independent, unbiased market research firm, this is an unbiased assessment. We're optimistic, and we see things coming back. Hospitalizations, elective procedures, and visits, they're slowly returning to normal. And while MD&D has heavily been impacted by the pandemic, some markets have managed to thrive despite of what's going on, and despite of the burden that are on the healthcare systems globally. So I want to thank Greenlight Guru again for organizing this. Thank you for participating. I think we have just a couple minutes for questions, and with that, I will turn it back over to Nick.
Thank you, Scott. Fantastic presentation. Lots of really great, insightful data. Getting a lot of questions and comments here about how great the presentation was. And a lot of questions to dive a little deeper. As you mentioned, we have about 6-7 minutes here to go over questions. So just want to hit a couple of the high-level ones. One that is a good follow-on to your last point here comes from Michael. Any more detail you can share into why you're so optimistic about 2021?
It's based on indicators that we're seeing. So we, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, but this gives me an opportunity to mention it. The way that we collect our data and generate our forecasts is not through a six-pack and a dartboard, although we're tempted occasionally on a Friday to do that. But poor silly joke there. But the way we make our forecasts are based on extensive primary and secondary research. So we are talking to end users, we are talking to industry, we are talking to the folks that are selling products, we're talking to purchasers in hospitals, and we're getting data directly from them. We're also exhaustively looking at the data in the secondary domain, and we're also tracking procedure volume, so we can look at what happened last month, what happened last quarter, how does that compare to the previous quarter. We look at leading indicators, macroeconomic and healthcare indicators, and we triangulate all of that data. And so our optimistic forecast is based on data that we're seeing right now. It's based on assumptions we're making going forward. They change, but overall, from a strategic directional level, that we're optimistic based on real data.
Awesome. Appreciate that background, Scott. Ben here has a question around slide 9 around a specific market rebound. What are some of the bright spots that you see leading the rebound in the wound management space?
So I am going to move to my wound model here. Bear with me for a second.
Right on.
This would probably be an appropriate question where if I could get contact info or share with anybody that wants to see the detailed models, I could do so. I think at a high level, the point here, aside from some of the technologies we're seeing, which again I can share details on post-call, are that this segment's tied to surgical procedures. Surgical procedures have been put on pause or delayed, and so when they come back, it's really a one-to-one. It's a one-to-one correlation. When the procedures come back, wound closure and management will come back. It will follow. It has to. And so really, it's a macro indicator of what's happening with procedures bouncing back. But Nick, I can follow up with the question and provide more detail. I'm happy to do that post-call.
Absolutely. I'll be sharing all these questions with you as well. So we'll be sure to get you and Ben connected.
Thank you.
Without diving maybe into another question around specifics around different markets, there's quite a few of them. I know we just got 1 or 2 minutes left here, but we got a great question from Dave Hood here. We would love for you to tell us some more details about your LSI Emerging MedTech Summit conference that you have coming up in mid-February that Greenlight Guru is a proud founding sponsor of.
Thank you, Dave, for that question and for teeing that up. We're really excited. We do an event each February, Emerging MedTech Summit, where we try to bring together the ecosystem, early stage companies that are raising capital. We want to get them in front of investors, acquirers, and folks like Greenlight Guru, who are thought leaders in our system, who are supporting the industry as a whole, whether you're providing the capital, doing the acquisition, or you're performing services that all these companies require to grow. We will be holding an event in February. There will be a strong in-person element. That sounds like a crazy thing to say while we're in California here with a big lockdown, but we're working with the Ritz-Carlton so that we can host a safe event. And we've just announced, and we're really excited about this, that we've added a digital element so that the things that we're doing like this, it allows everybody to get involved. So if you're interested in a big investment, strategic partnering event, and if you want to see some of the technologies and the incredible companies that we see out there, check out the event. Thanks for the question.
Absolutely, Scott, and thanks for the presentation. Thanks for the overview. I know it was our first time out at the event last year. It was a fantastic event. Lots of great companies, lots of great investors, and we look forward to participating again this year. So thank you again, everybody, for participating here and joining on today. Just to reiterate, I know there's been a couple questions that yes, everybody will get a copy of the slides. Those will be emailed to you after the event. And we got our next presentation coming up for you in about 15 minutes. So we look forward to seeing you there. And Scott, once again, thank you so much for the presentation. Where can people find more information about you or get in contact?
They can visit our website, which is ls-intel.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. If you can connect with me on LinkedIn, direct message me, tell me, hey, I want the slides. I know Nick's going to give them to you here, but if you want detail behind the models, feel free to reach out to me or reach out to Nick and Kennedy, and I'm sure that they can coordinate it. So visit us at ls-intel.com, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I again, really appreciate you, Nick, and Greenlight Guru. You guys are doing amazing things, and it's a real honor to be a part of an event like this. It takes a lot of time, effort, and courage to do something like this. So I tip my hat to you and your whole team. Thank you.
Much appreciated, Scott, and thank you, everybody. See ya.